It was the fall of 1982, down on Lantern Road in the southern part of Missouri, about 4 miles from the nearest town. My name doesn't matter much for this story, but back then I was a lineman for the county electric co-op. I had a wife, Carol, a 10-year-old son named Danny, a 7-year-old daughter named Beth, and a mutt named Scout who slept out on the porch most nights because he preferred the cool concrete to the rug inside. It started small enough that I almost didn't notice it starting at all. Beth had taken to standing at her bedroom window some evenings before bed, just looking out at the yard the way kids do when they're supposed to be getting ready to sleep and aren't. One night at supper, out of nowhere, she looked up from her plate and said, "The man by the trees waved at me again today." Carol and I both went still. "What man, honey?" Carol said, careful like she didn't want to spook her into stopping. "The one who stands by the big trees." Beth said it the way she'd have told us what color the school bus was, like it was a fact she assumed we already had. "When did you see a man by the trees?" "Lots of times." She shrugged and went back to her green beans. Danny said he hadn't seen anybody. I asked Beth to show me exactly where, and she walked me out after supper, barefoot in the grass, and pointed at a stand of oaks maybe 60 yards back from the house, past where the yard gave way to weeds. There was nothing there, just trees and the ordinary dark starting to settle into them. "He doesn't come every day," she said, like that settled something. I told myself kids make up games. I told myself that for almost 2 weeks. Then Scout changed. He'd always been a barker, at the mail carrier, at cars slowing down out front, at nothing at all some nights, the way dogs do. But that fall he went quiet in a way that unsettled me worse than any barking ever had. Every night, right around 1 in the morning, he'd get up off the porch, walk out into the yard, sit down at the exact same spot near the fence line, and just look at the tree line. No growling, no hackles up. Just sitting there, still as a fence post, staring into the dark like he was waiting for something to arrive, or waiting on something that had already arrived to leave. Carol started watching him from the bedroom window. "He's not scared of it," she said one night. "That's the part I can't stand. He's not scared of it at all." I walked out there myself one night in my socks, stood next to my own dog, and looked where he was looking. I couldn't see a thing, but I stood there a long time anyway, and by the end of it, I had the strangest feeling that I wasn't looking at empty woods so much as I was looking at a spot where somebody had very recently been standing and had simply stepped back a few feet into the dark to wait me out. Our neighbor, an old farmer named Wendell Pruitt, who'd worked the land 2 properties over since before I was born, stopped me at the mailbox a few days later. "Didn't know you had kin visiting," he said. "We don't." "Huh." He scratched his jaw. "Tall fella. Figured he was your brother or some such. The way he sits out by your tree line of a Thursday evening, real still. Don't wave, don't do nothing, just sits." I asked him how long he'd been seeing this. "Month maybe. Didn't think nothing of it till you said you don't have no kin round here." That was the first time the bottom really dropped out of my stomach. Not because of what Wendell saw, because of how long he'd been seeing it without either of us thinking to mention it to the other. A man had been sitting at the edge of my property on a schedule regular enough that my neighbor had started to think of him as furniture. I didn't tell the kids what Wendell said. I told Carol everything. A week later, Danny came home from the bus stop and said, real casual, dropping his backpack by the door, "That tall man was out by the mailbox again." "What tall man?" I said, too fast, and Danny looked up at me like he was surprised I didn't already know. "The one that watches when we get off the bus. He doesn't do anything. He just stands there till the bus pulls off." "How long's he been doing that?" Danny thought about it. "A while, I guess. I figured you knew." I hadn't known. That was the thing that kept circling back on me at night. Not that a stranger was watching my children, but that my children had already folded him into the ordinary furniture of their days, the same way Wendell had. Nobody had been frightened enough soon enough to say something out loud. He'd made himself part of the background before any of us had the sense to be scared of him. Beth started drawing him, not on purpose, not like she was trying to show us anything. Just idle crayon drawings the way kids fill up a Saturday afternoon. Carol found one on the kitchen table, the swing set out back, stick figure versions of Beth and Danny on it, and off to the side, near where the trees would be, a tall shape in a coat, standing by itself. "Who's that?" Carol asked, keeping her voice easy. "That's the lonely man," Beth said. "He watches us play sometimes. I think he wants to play too." Carol had to leave the kitchen for a minute after that. That was the night we called Sheriff Purdy, an older fellow who'd known my daddy. He drove out, walked the tree line with a flashlight, found nothing but ordinary woods, same as I had. There was no fence cut, no window forced, nothing broken or stolen. Just a shape a little girl kept describing the same way, twice, 3 weeks apart, with details that never changed and never got dramatic the way a made-up story tends to drift. "There's no law against a man standing on his own side of the property line," Purdy said, not unkindly, "but I'll have a deputy swing through at night when he can." That helped for about 4 days. Then I saw him myself. I woke before 5 one morning, the house still dark, and something pulled me to the kitchen window the way you sometimes wake up already knowing something's different before you've opened your eyes all the way. He was standing at the tree line, not hiding behind anything, not moving, a thin man in a canvas coat just watching the house, watching the dark windows, patient as the fence posts around him, with the gray coming up behind him where the sun hadn't broken yet. I didn't reach for anything. I didn't shout. For a few seconds I just stood there and watched him back, and some old animal part of me understood, before I'd worked it out in words, that he wasn't watching the house the way a stranger sizing up a place would. He was watching it the way a man watches something he already half believed belonged to him. The moment my hand found the porch light switch, he turned, unhurried, and walked back into the trees. Not fast, like a man finishing a shift. I told Carol that morning that I wanted her and the kids at her sister's place in town for a while, just until things settled. She didn't want to go, but I told her I needed to know they were safe more than I needed her beside me. I stood in the driveway and watched the station wagon's taillights disappear down Lantern Road, and then I went back inside to wait. I sat in the dark kitchen that night with an old baseball bat across my knees, porch light off on purpose, wanting whoever it was to think the house was as empty and quiet as it usually was by 11. Around 1:30 I heard it, not at the tree line this time, but close, behind the shed, a slow scraping sound. I went out the back door in my socks, flashlight off, and found the old storm cellar door standing open, the rusted latch worked loose. A man was down inside, on his knees in the dirt, digging at the packed earth floor by the light of a small camping lantern. Thin, maybe 60, gray-bearded, in that same canvas coat. "Curtis Halloway," I said. It wasn't a question. He looked up at me, and there was nothing frantic in his face at all. No guilt, no fear, just a kind of tired, familiar patience, like a man who'd been caught doing something he'd long ago stopped being ashamed of. "It has to be down here somewhere," he said, quiet, almost gentle. "My father always said the cellar. I just needed to know for sure." I told him to come up slow. He did, hands raised, no fight in him. I marched him to the porch steps, told him to sit, and went inside to call Sheriff Purdy, my hands shaking so bad I dropped the receiver twice. When I came back out 4 minutes later, the steps were empty. The lantern still burned where he'd left it in the grass. Curtis Halloway was gone into the tree line, same as he must have come and gone 100 nights before that one, and no flashlight beam turned up any sign of him. Purdy and 2 deputies searched half the night. In the cellar, they found an old rusted tin box, warped and pried open so long ago the hinges had rusted solid. Whatever had once been inside it long gone before Curtis ever came back for it. It was Purdy himself who found the notebook, 3 days later, tucked under the floorboards of an old hunting blind on the Pruitt property line. Not far, it turned out, from the very trees Beth had been pointing to since the start of all this. Water warped, the cover soft and swollen, but the pages still readable. He set it on our kitchen table without a word, like he wasn't sure he wanted to be the one handing it to me. The front pages were older, the ink faded, a rough tally of dates going back years, a line about the cellar floor never having been dug out proper, a note about his father never trusting banks. That part, at least, had probably been true once. That part was probably how all of this started. The pages after that were us. Which Thursdays Wendell was out working his back acreage and which he wasn't. what time the school bus usually ran late, a little sketch of the swing set, not bad, with an arrow to where a person could stand at the tree line and see the whole yard at once. A line, dated weeks back, that just read, "The little one sees me now. She isn't afraid." Whatever the silver dollars meant to him once, they weren't what filled up that notebook by the end. The money was still in there, but it was buried under pages of us, which Thursdays Wendell wasn't watching, what time the bus ran late, which nights the porch light stayed off. I don't know when digging for his father's coins turned into something else. I just know that by the time Purdy set that notebook down on my table, the money didn't feel like the reason anymore. It felt like the thing he told himself so neither of us had to look at the other part, straight on. Purdy read it twice at my kitchen table, and when he looked up, he didn't tell me it was nothing to worry about, the way he had the first time. He just turned it face down, like he didn't want it looking up at either of us anymore, and said, "He wasn't lying to you about the cellar. I just don't think the cellar was ever really what kept him coming back. They never found him, not that week, not that year. 2 names he'd supposedly used since leaving Missouri both went cold before they went anywhere. There was never enough on paper to call it more than trespassing, and a sick old man chasing his late father's stories wasn't a case anybody wanted to keep open. Eventually, the file just stopped moving, the way those things do. We moved back into the house. I put a new latch on the storm cellar doors, a good heavy one. Beth stopped drawing the man by the swing set, though it took a long while and longer than I liked, before she stopped glancing at the tree line out of habit before she'd go out to play. I still lock every door before bed, every single night, same as I have since 1982. But it isn't the storm cellar I think about anymore, and it isn't the buried money, real or not. What stays with me is my own daughter at my own dinner table, telling me about a man who waved at her the way you'd mention a neighbor you liked, and how long he must have stood at that tree line, patient and unhurried, before a 7-year-old simply got used to seeing him and started, in her own small way, waiting for him to come back. We never learned why.